So, boys and girls, this is Asiqluq. He is a professor of mine, and he also works at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And do you want to talk a little bit about yourself, Asiqluq?
Now, Runga ataga Asiqluq, apaga singuk, anaga alimi, um, apaga uh, fedlu egalu, akaga gasilu marilu, cork ni runga. Um, so I'm Asiqluq. My white fox name is Sean Topcock. My parents are the late Clifford and Eileen Topcock from Teller. And I introduced my grandparents as well. But I'm a person of the Quark people, and I'm an Ibek, Sami, Kven, and also Irish and Norwegian.
Awesome. So, um, we have been exploring in our topic of study lately has been Alaska history and specifically the Spanish flu in rural Alaska. And we have a lot of questions about how different communities handled this really tremendous situation. And so we would like to discuss one of those villages, if it's okay with you. If we could talk about Shishmaref.
Certainly, yes.
Okay.
And my father-in-law is from Shishmaref.
Oh, nice.
He's Delana Bar, and so my wife is from Kotzebue, and my mother-in-law is from Noatak. So, but they live in it. I have in-laws, and my sister-in-law lives in Shishmaref. So,
Awesome.
my father-in-law came and visited us in 2010, and he actually talked more about the theory in the 1920s and how it was after dinner. We had tea. We usually have tea, when they come visit, and we'd sit around and share stories. And we recorded him telling a story about how, among other things, he talked about lots of different things, but one of them was about the diphtheria and how they learned from the 1918 Spanish flu that rural villages were impacted. So, for the defense of for the diphtheria epidemic, my father-in-law Delano shared that they posted guards outside Shishmaref.
Yeah.
So nobody came in and nobody came out, and they basically made sure that nobody was affected. So it was basically saved because of what they learned from the 1918.
Why do you think, sorry to interrupt, why do you think that only Shishmaref chose this approach when so many other communities were so heavily impacted by this?
Well, I don't think Shishmaref was the only one that chose this approach, but it was an example of a community that had chosen this approach, and not everyone again had chosen this approach. My father-in-law shared back in 2010, 10 years ago, that not everybody learned from the 1918, like places like Nome was really affected by the diphtheria, and he also said that there's some old villages that aren't around anymore, that the whole villages had perished, and then in order for them to really to take care of the people, they kind of collapsed their sod houses during that time, so that it was, so that they wouldn't become further infected.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow.
It's very sad that it's something that they're putting in place right now in a lot
Yeah.
of villages. So I'm glad that they were listening to the elders
Me
and
too.
remember these epidemics.
Right. There was a quote I heard recently, like rational thought or history and rational thought or something like that is the best weapon we have. And I think that that's pretty true right now. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. I'm wondering, so because Shishmaref during the Spanish flu, and just knowing that there were other communities that also followed this example that maybe aren't as well known, what role did these communities play in their recovery efforts? Because when you look at cities or places like Wales, where they had to be they had to re-adopt children or reconfigure their family unions. Did outside villages play a role in helping this process, or did they do?
Yeah, during that time, especially 1918, if you're talking about the Spanish flu epidemic, um, it, it was a really rough time. Just if you think about the time period, um, there's newcomers that were there were teachers were coming in, and communities were building schools at the same time. The gold rush was coming in, so a whole bunch of outsiders were coming in, and during that time, so there's a lot of new diseases that came with it because our immune systems as indigenous people weren't used to some of these um, new diseases that other people were carrying,
Mm-hmm.
and so to help recover, some families have perished, some villages have perished. Um, One of the other things that was happening during that time period was the Sheldon Jackson. He was working with the um, U.S. Department of Education at the time, and he was introducing reindeer herders to the Inupiat and the Ute people to become reindeer herders so that they could stay in one place and become reindeer herders, and build these communities. So, um, yeah, it's so with that, some people, some families have perished, and parents have perished, and so, and in my grandmother's case, um, her uh, her father was a Sami reindeer herder and was delivering mail at the time when she was an infant. And when he was delivering mail, he fell through the ice and he froze to death, unfortunately. So he's so she uh, was was born in Mary's Igloo or Teller Station, um, but they sent her off to Wales, where there was a group of Sami people that helped teach her um, how to do some Sami skin sewing, with the boots,
Yeah.
with the toes pointing up. And so, uh, but however, she spoke uh, mostly Inupiaq. And so, being a fair skin, she was and also fair skin. She was one of the lucky few people that was able to attend school up to a certain age. But she married at a young age. She married my grandfather, who was a reindeer herder, also um, Fred Topcock, and they were they had their herd in Teller area. But since there's so many different things that happen, and so many, it's not just Spanish flu, but there's the newcomers and gold rush, and Um, so all of these things were factors of why why uh, children were needed to be placed in foster homes.
Got
And
it.
so
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting. So, and to my understanding, are a lot of the homes that were built for children during this time, were they to address sort of a combination of the factors in terms of sort of this religious influence and then these pressures from diseases? Or was it primarily due to diseases and families disappearing?
Yeah, but I think it's like from my grandmother's situation.
Mm-hmm.
She was raised in a um, foster kind of like group home where there are other um, Sami women that helped take care of her. So so that was situational because she was also Sami as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's other times that I saw like one of the questions why from one of the students that said why go with a widow or why was a child said go with a widow. It's because the
Mm-hmm.
widow had lost most of her family as well, so this was an opportunity um, for the um, woman to raise children, and with Inupiaq
Yeah.
customs, uh, it's not unusual for widows, to be well taken care of. There's old stories that we have of why it's so important to take care of widows, feeding them, hunters getting food for them. It also it allows them to again uh, have that the family responsibilities. It's one of our back
Mm-hmm.
values is family roles, and the role of the widow would be somebody who helps take care of um, the um, the child who lost their parents. And also it's
Got it.
you know that's one of our customs as well, to take care of those children as well.
That makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Wow. Thank you so much for all the information.
Probably too much, a lot of information, but it's just the tip of
I
the
know. I want to,
iceberg.
there's so many other questions. I do just have one last question. Um, and then I guess I'm curious. Well, so I mean, I guess it's hard to ask a question about this time period because, like you said, there's so many moving pieces that have contributed to the strategies on the ground. But from the documents I read, comparing a town like Shishmaref, which was left largely intact, to other towns that had a greater, were affected in a more negative way. What were the long-term impacts on the cultures of those towns due to their experience during these time periods?
I think it, it, the long term impact, I think, was um, basically informing villages how they could be more how they could survive these things in the future. Again, we're looking at the story of Shishmaref and other villages, and and and, and of going by the same rules
Mm-hmm.
uh, that they've placed, uh, that our ancestors placed, so that we could um, you know implement the same things of their survival so that our descendants, our children, could survive